All
All
right,
right.
we're now on air, as they say.
Awesome.
YouTube tells me there are 13 people waiting, which is exciting for me. I think that's the most people that I've ever tuned in
Wow.
at one time. So you must be a pretty important person, Mike.
It's like a seminar class listening in.
Yeah, something like that. Like a small liberal arts college or something. Real quick, let me just check all systems are go. Yeah, I see the stream up. I got the text chat open, people. So if any of you want to type into us, I'm watching. Joe Doe says hi guys. Xenogoth says oh hey. All right,
Hi.
I'm on this. We say hi too. We're here chilling. All right, I think we're all systems go. How you doing today, Mike? What's happening?
I'm doing really well. I'm excited to talk about Bronze Age Pervert and his new book, Bronze Age Mindset, the Amazon bestseller that has broken the internet.
Yeah, are you? Would you say you're a big fan of the pervert?
Well, I feel like the reception to my review has really changed how I view something like a fandom and how I would consider myself a fan or like an interested observer in the case of the Bronze Age Pervert and the Bronze Age cult, as it seems. But I have been for a long time an interested follower, and he has actually followed me back on Twitter, and
Nice.
yeah. And in fact, there was this one time where like a little while ago, or I guess kind of a while ago, on his original account, he like randomly messaged me and was like, I noticed you have this De Chirico cover photo. Like, what do you see in it? And I like said something like about why I thought it was like cool or something, and then he was like, no, but what do you see? And I was like, not really sure what to say. Anyway, so that's the only actual interaction I've had with him specifically.
Well,
And I was sort of amused by it, but yeah.
I think you're pretty lucky to have any interaction. He just blocked me.
Yeah. I don't know why. I mean, your videos was not too bad. I mean, it was like
I thought it was pretty, I thought it was an homage to him. Maybe he didn't say that. Maybe he didn't say it that way.
He hasn't said anything public, or I haven't seen him say anything about my piece. So I hope he liked it. I hope he thinks what I had to say was good.
Well, to be fair, I've only read like probably the first 2,000 words of Bronze Age Mindset, but so I hardly really know what his shtick is, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you. I'm mostly interested in the Bronze Age pervert phenomenon from an internet culture fascination. I'm just very intrigued by all the different personalities out there, and how people are independently and creatively constituting peculiar projects and platforms and everything. So I was very intrigued and quite impressed, I should say, by the whole Bronze Age Pervert book launch. That was why I did those.
It's really impressive. Yeah. Like I mean, self-published books usually are like so amateur and just sort of like really a laughing stock in and of itself. And this like it sort of showed that you can actually just get a lot of hype through social media and like cater to a specific audience, subculture thing you already have in mind. And like, I'm sure it sold pretty good. I mean, it was pretty expensive for being an ebook of like really, really niche. And apparently all these people, I mean, I paid for it. Like, so it's like,
Yeah.
But, or I was going to say like, so I think like that in and of itself is already like pretty significant. But what I was really interested in and why I like sort of what I got into it in the review was I thought it was really interesting how much of like a pastiche parody of like Nietzsche it was, and how it's sort of like I wanted to engage it on like on that level and be like, what is this as like I'm reading this as something that's like itself like a fandom of Nietzsche or part of like the Nietzsche like legacy, like always being contested over for past 100 years. And so I thought that was sort of like the terms on which I engaged in it. And so that was or what were you going to say?
Yeah, could I ask you a question there? You said before you made a reference to how it changed your view of fandoms. Maybe you could expand on that, because I also in making the videos that I made and my kind of probing of the Bronze Age pervert phenomenon, it actually really triggered a few updates in my own mind about the current reality of like basically the way that independent creators make these alternative realities that large numbers of people want to consume. Yeah.
So yeah, there's a lot to say on that. And so this was basically like my idea about, I was like, man, these people really take it seriously, when I realized that like once the review came out and how like vitriolic a lot of the responses were. And I wasn't really expecting that. I mean, I was expecting a little bit of controversy just because it was like kind of, I knew it was probing a sensitive area of sort of like, I mean, like queer subjects are always like, when it's like queer stuff and masculinity, there's always like some sort of like odd mix. And well, anyway,
real quick, we have a question from the audience that's asking us, why is BAP so special? Joe Doe says, I'm a newbie. I read his book, but I still don't get it. Well, you know, Mike wrote an article about it, so maybe he could talk about it at greater length. But really quickly for a newbie, I would just say, I mean, I don't think there's anything too special. He's just sort of one of many kind of strange internet intellectuals, although perhaps, I guess, at a more, you know, concentrated and focused and sustained scale, I guess, than a lot of kind of internet intellectual avatars. So maybe that's why it's special, I guess, because, you know, it's quite a sustained project, and it is quite intriguing. You know, there's definitely something going on under the hood that's pretty significantly intellectual, at the very least. I think Mike's reading is even more perhaps generous. I think Mike sees a lot going on under the hood. But from my perspective, it's just kind of one of many fascinating kind of you know, experimental, provocative internet intellectual projects. And it just happens to have been, he released a book recently to respond to this question that got a fair amount of traction for a self-published ebook. So that's, I guess, what is special about him in a short answer anyway. I don't know if you want to explain something else about that, Mike.
I think you actually got it pretty much without going like too much into like the minutia of the book. And because well, what I personally thought was really interesting about it was how like the Bronze Age pervert like social media brand essentially is like so obsessed with like male desire, and like that I think is like the most, if you were going to identify any like distinguishing feature of Bronze Age pervert, it's like hunky dudes, like well-oiled, like beach bodies, and like coupled with some sort of like esoteric message about like this like rising like Bronze Age like essence that is like breaking through like from like the primordial like just to destroy modernity and like bring us back to this like golden age. But it's all in these like really hunky like dudes that are just like always flexing and like well tanned and just like yeah. And so it's like there's something going on with this. I think that's like really clear. And like there's some way that it's like trying to like reclaim, or so I think it is, and but open to debate, like this sort of like terrain, and by which like we can like really like appreciate, but something even like much deeper than just appreciating like the male body. And
so, okay, here's a specific question for you. I'm just curious. Do you think that Bronze Age pervert is multiple people, or like what's your thesis about the actual author?
I actually think that the book had some co-writers, but I don't really know enough about it. Could be multiple people, but I've also like read other random stuff that seem to indicate that it's like this one guy that like happens to be a Strauss scholar and like and somehow has connections to both Brazil and France or something. And yeah, I mean some other stuff, but so I think there's like one guy who's that, and apparently is quite dedicated to the brand. But I also heard something like there are some other people that helped in writing it. But
so we got a few interesting comments. We got some high quality, high intelligence comments coming through the chat. Actually, it's actually almost too much to keep up with. Apparently, ex Thermidor editor PT Carlo I guess talk shit about me and you separately, Mike. I didn't hear anything about that, but he accused you of being gay and me of losing my mind.
That PT Carlo had a terrible review, and his review called out my review, and it was just like really, really funny because it was like the review that I wrote basically like was so like monumental that it just couldn't be ignored. And he like referred to that. And then like there was after the controversy over when like my review came out, and then like Nick Land defended it because he was sort of saying something like, I love this person, like I love the Bronze Age pervert thing, but apparently like people don't understand that it's like ironic or whatever. And it was like, and then that was like pretty good decisive like thing in my support. But like people like PT Carlo were really angry. Some other reactionary frog Twitter.
Was most of the hate that you got coming from the right?
Yes, it was all coming from the right.
Okay.
I feel like I have, like, for all the things that I've written, sort of anticipated getting flack from the left because I'm like so used to the idea of like the leftists being like so like easily offended and stuff. Like with the incels piece I wrote, I felt like I needed to defend why I would dare like analyze Elliot Rodger or something, like, oh my God, that he's such a misogynist. So I basically like wanted to like hedge everything and like appease them. But then like all the shit I got was from the right. Like it was all these people that were like, oh my God, you're using like these social justice warrior types of like theoretical terms. And it's like,
right.
So, and the same with this too.
I should say, maybe to summarize for people who are listening who maybe aren't up to speed on all this, your article basically kind of tries to argue that Bronze Age Pervert is basically a queer project. So
yeah.
You're kind of trying to reclaim, the Bronze Age Pervert project kind of as consistent with, kind of left-wing cultural movement right now. Yeah. Right. So I could understand why that would garner a lot of antagonism from the right wing.
What I thought, what a lot of the people thought about it, and like I thought a lot of the fans viewed it as sort of like, oh yeah, it's like kind of gay, but like wink wink, like we're not actually gay. Like it's like this is just like manly stuff, like bodybuilding, like nothing gay about it. But like sort of like everyone's sort of in on it, and they're like well aware of the fact that it's like dealing with all this like homoerotic stuff, but like they're just actually like cool with it. And that's sort of how I was trying to engage in it, because I was like, this is really fascinating, because it's like they're both like, there's all this like homophobic content and like all these like messages that sort of like decry like the weak gay people, or like like all this stuff that's anti-twinks. Like it's very anti-twinks, but it wants to like reclaim this area where like you have these like buff men that like want to fuck other buff men. Like that's good. That's strong. And I sort of took it as like, that's really what it looks like on the surface. And there's all sorts of stuff that like all sorts of passages in the book that sort of like are closing in on like talking about like the bathhouse as like this utopian, like anonymous space and whatnot. But like, it doesn't quite literally say that, but, and, so once the thing was, my article was written and came out, and I think at first a lot of people saw that there was an article like, oh, review of Bronze Age Pervert book. So they all like retweeted that and were like, oh yeah, let's read this. And then started reading, and I was like, gay? This is queer. What's that going on in here?
Well, and one of the things that I'm really into right now is just strange combinations of left-wing and right-wing shit. So, I mean, like, things have been polarized and increasingly polarized in especially American politics for, the past several years, decades even in some sense. And so what that has meant is that more and more individual kind of intellectual or ideological issues, such as policy issues or whatever the case might be, are now more tightly aligned with basic kind of left-right identification than they have been historically. And so with this kind of massive bifurcation and polarization along the left-right dimension, that's just really boring, right? Like there are all different ways to combine all different types of beliefs and preferences into weird, amalgamations. And there's no reason why there shouldn't be a much wider space of configurations of interesting intellectual projects. And so I find this sort of just with Bronze Age Pervert just as one example, really, of a much larger type of phenomenon that I think is perhaps kind of underway right now in exciting ways, where people are just starting to say like, God damn, this whole like left versus right thing is so stupid and artificial and oppressive that I can be all about sort of, gay men fucking men, and also like alt-right, like cults of power. I mean, it's like there's no reason there can't be someone who is actually a male gay man who likes fucking Abercrombie and Fitch models, and who also like hates social justice warriors. I mean, there's no reason that can't exist then. So I find that really interesting and cool.
Sure.
And like, I'm not that interested in Bronze Age Pervert, really, like, but as an example of this sort of opening, I find it quite, a refreshing kind of experiment.
Yeah, it is really interesting. And yeah, I think I agree entirely with what you just said. So yeah. And one other thing I'd like to add to this is I don't really want to like just accuse like Bronze Age Pervert guy or the authors or whoever of just like being gay, like whatever like we are mean by that. And in my piece, I sort of want to separate that from like the like gay identity and like who would be sort of like reflected in what the gay pride parade is about or something like. And I think that like he is very clear that he doesn't want to be like this part of this identity, but still wants to like be like participating and like enjoying like desire in a sense. And sort of like, so I actually kind of find that like, or what I identified there is like admirable and like actually the like liberating part, because just like it seems as if it views like if everything needs to be like boxed into this sort of category, or like you can't like be a bodybuilder without it being sort of being suspect of this thing that like subverts your masculinity. And like sort of there's something really unsettling about that. And I think that like the Bronze Age Pervert thing really tries to like navigate that and reclaim that in a way. And there's like all sorts of other problematic things that come up in it, obviously, because there's like there's a lot of stuff I didn't even talk about in the review because I thought was really, really boring, actually. Like a lot of the stuff about like race, like the metaphysics of racism, and the stuff that was like really thought was uninteresting, like derivative of like the like Evola. I'm not sure how to pronounce that guy's name, but like the he's like one of the other, it's like him and Nietzsche that are like the two like big people in the like Bronze Age Pervert like mind, like those are the big writers that he's like getting inspired by. And I thought that like the Nietzsche stuff is way more interesting. And
okay, so here's a specific additional question then for you. What do you think about my hypothesis that there is some deep four-dimensional chess going on here between kind of liberal progressive journalists in the mainstream and these kind of strange right-wing creative projects? Because I noticed, by the way, that you cited my video in your article. I appreciate that. I only just realized that when I was reviewing your article for this conversation. I clicked on one of the links and it brought me to my video. I was like, oh, wow. Thanks, Mike. So I think you quoted it as saying like an uncanny connection between Bronze Age Pervert and liberal progressive journalists. Do you also have a sense that there's something very strange going on in that regard?
Well, I watched your video and I was like, yeah, this is uncanny. So, I mean, it's weird. I wouldn't have noticed that myself because I wasn't really looking at it in that way. I mean, I was just sort of like looking at it, the content in itself, and being like, how am I going to write a review of this and whatnot? But I mean, like this guy is obviously like smart, and like smart people like talk with other smart people. And like, I mean, here in DC, like everyone is friends with, there's a lot of people that are just like friends with all these other people across the political aisle. And like, it would not surprise me one bit, like if these people were actually like conspiring together to like to like get big. And I mean, there's like totally like this relationship with like the like liberal centrist like left press and like the subjects they write about, and like so like they want to
right. Well, because you know what? I mean, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, like if you're not plugged in socially with like different types of intellectual circles and, you know, whatever, like progressive academic lefty activist milieus, or if you're not plugged in socially to these like, you know, right wing like intellectual communities, and you're kind of just watching all of these sorts of debates take place from the outside, especially in the former case, if you're not like plugged into the sociology of, you know, leftist intellectuals, what a lot of people don't realize is that a very large number of respectable mainstream kind of left-wing, often very social justice warrior type of people, a lot of them actually do talk in private about, you know, all the stupidity of kind of like political correctness. And, you know, they talk in private about, you know, how they, you know, they see through it, and they're not, you know, the type of person to care about that censorship. But most of them are basically too cowardly to, you know, put their money where their mouth is and actually say anything that they think in public. So, I know this because I was like in, you know, deeply embedded in left-wing sociology really for like several years. So like when you take that into consideration and you realize that a lot of people in kind of like left-wing intelligentsia circles are actually just like scared to say what they really think. That's, I think, one of the reasons why one of the bases for my kind of like batshit conspiracy theory, like comedy thriller videos that I made, because it's not at all unreasonable to me or implausible to me that actually, you know, there are people playing the cathedral intelligentsia game to power and money or whatever and influence and status, but are also willing to like play all kinds of other games on the side, because for a lot of these people, it's really just this kind of like strategic song and dance, this like strategic hall of mirrors.
Yeah. Yeah. What's also unfortunate is like, it's so hard to like have, to like publish such an article, like as I did in a lot of other, like left-wing media outlets. Like, and even though my thing was like essentially had like in a lot of ways, like a leftist or orientation, and was like sort of interested in like using those terms to talk about this thing. And like ultimately sort of like the way I came down on it was like the way that like a left wing take would, even though I was like pretty generous, I think. And, but like that wouldn't like the left wing people aren't interested in running this or like having anyone read it. And it's just like, there's such a huge gap in like the, like in the media basically. And like for a lot of like there's just so many like nothing left-wing magazines that just like they don't really publish a lot of really interesting or original, or like they sort of have like they sort of have these acceptable topics to talk about, but then like when you sort of get outside of that, and it's like they don't know how to like deal with something like the Bronze Age pervert and the fact that it's like queer or whatever. Like they would be like, oh, queer, that needs to be like, oh, like all this is, we can all hold hands and be like,
right.
But there's still so much problematic stuff to map out too. And
yeah, for sure. I mean, the way that I thought about this, because I've been thinking about this like for a long time, and I think the way I see it is that there's really only fundamentally two different ways to have a kind of intellectual project. You're either searching for something that's outside of you, that's amenable to independent reality testing. So it's a real search. Like you're either finding the thing or you're not finding the thing. You're either getting closer to what it is you're driving towards in, you know, the objective outside, or you're not making progress toward it. And, you know, that's a one way to sustain and motivate and organize intellectual, you know, energy with yourself or with other people. But there's a fundamentally different type of thing that people do, which is basically just playing word games with the word systems that they know to be recognized as valuable by other people. And it's like a completely different paradigm for like, you know, sitting down and moving words around on a page, a completely different type of psychological activity. And it's occurred to me recently, like very, this is really come into focus for me only recently in my life, how much of basically all mainstream, progressive, respectable, leftist, left-leaning intellectual work is of the latter variety. There's not like a search for something outside that's uncertain and hard to access, but can be approached with the right methods of truth seeking, whether it be science or theory or whatever it might be. There's like a kind of sense of what other people in your group like and value, and then there's just basically like demonstrations of one's symbolic prowess, like how well can you creatively rearrange words that you already know to be liked and valued by other people who are going to like give you support for rearranging those words in that clever way that you've rearranged them. But there's no like movement towards anything in the world. And it's really only struck me recently how radical is the fundamental difference between those two totally different types of intellectual activity. That's just a bit of a rant. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
No, I think you're onto something. I kind of want to bring this. There's something about Bronze Age mindset, and wanted to bring it back to, because we're sort of getting into like the left, the way that like leftists have to say about things, and then like you get outside of that, and they don't really know how to like. It's like does not compute 404, and then it's like, oh, this is problematic. Well, and then there's that, as I've seen on the fascist side, because like there was, since there's such a big following apparently of the Bronze Age pervert and Bronze Age mindset, and all the people that have been like tweeting stuff like pictures of the book with their like muscly arms, being like, was journeying in the woods and wood nymph brought me this book. Like, what does it mean? So that like the So basically what I wanted to say was, I didn't mean to really be like saying that this is gay or whatever, as I said before, but that was like probably the most common criticism from the people that were like objected to it, was like, I don't think, like, sure, you said all this stuff, but I still don't think that means he's gay or whatnot. And something that I didn't even say in the piece itself, and was like, wrote a bunch of paragraphs specifically to avoid that sort of accusation. But still, I think that that's like a really like insightful thing, because like it shows the sensitivity and also the importance of that issue relative to this, because like I have no idea what the author is like personally, and like maybe he's like actually like this like gay dude that like lives with like his like male partner, or maybe he's like absolutely not and like has never like done any sort of like anything like that. But I think that's like completely irrelevant, and I think that's like totally irrelevant to how I'm like analyzing this text. And I was like, I'm just talking about this text, and also talking about like the social media personality, like the Twitter feed as the text too. Well, anyway, and but like it's so it's like such this like contested area. Like if you start to view it in the terms of like queer desire, like it's like this forbidden thing, which I thought was really interesting, because I was sort of like wanted to approach it as like this thing that everyone sort of acknowledged, but like they were like, wink, wink, it's something else. Like, but like we all are in the know here. And like there is, but I really think that like there's the two readings, or like this, there's like a even bigger gap between like on one level, like what like BAP is saying specific, like all the like really like the queer innuendos and all the stuff that makes it sound like it's like out of Naked Lunch or something, like all the things that are like really like, I like dirty like anonymous like holes and shit like that. And like then on the level of like how a lot of these like a lot of the fans sort of see it, and they're like take it at face value and are like, no, it's not, there's nothing gay here. So like
right. So real quick, if I could jump in, we got some energy coming from the audience saying that a few people are basically saying we should talk about Twitter beefs. And
oh yeah, okay, I'm in for this.
In particular, People are asking me about Logo Dedulus. Honestly, I mean, I'm the absolute worst at keeping up on all the crazy people on Twitter. I mean, I like the Twitter internet, intellectual ecologies, but I can't keep up with anything really. So because I'm too fucking busy doing productive shit, people, which you should all be doing also, by the way. I don't want to encourage your bad habits of paying too much
People
attention.
need to write things. Like, they need to actually write their own stuff. There are all sorts of people that were like, Jacobite, why did Jacobite write this thing by a left-wing person on this great book, on this like amazing book? And like, it's like, you write something and send it in. Like, they're interested.
Yeah, for sure. I'm very sympathetic to that. But no, I mean, this is kind of cool because what I like about this setup, doing these hangouts, is like people who want to just give like very low effort like pitches into the conversation can do so in a way that like actually allows us to be more productive about it. Instead of just like volleys of like low effort antagonism on Twitter that go nowhere. At least here, people can pitch volleys of low effort provocations into the text chat, and then maybe we can actually, make some progress on them. So let's go with that actually. Because I am actually interested in following more and following better, like more closely all the weird internet ecologies. So Mike, do you know who Logo Dedulus is?
Yeah. I have an ongoing beef with him.
Okay, so tell me that beef. Tell me about it.
Well, mostly it's like I just think he's like wrong about like everything, but he's like really outspoken in his views, and he like is interested in a lot of the same sort of like texts as I am, like the same like literature sort of stuff, but like just somehow he like has always like this terribly wrong, like just you can't even, it's like I can't let this slide. He's like educating all these like his like thousands of followers, like this stuff that's just like completely mistaken. Well, anyway,
how big is his following?
I think he's got like 8,000 something.
Is he really smart or not?
I think he went to like NYU. He's like, I think he might be like a year younger than me or so. Okay. I mean, he's like well read. I mean, I'm sure, but I mean, it's hard, like high IQ, yeah, but misses the point, like probably most of the time. I would he was one of the big antagonists of my Bronze Age mindset review, which I actually appreciated because I enjoy like the beef gets things a lot of attention, and his input was actually sort of substantial. And I think if I recall correctly, he said that I was like, said something about like patrician and plebeian levels of like homosexuality or something. I could probably pull up his tweet in a second, but it was sort of like I was saying that what the Bronze Age pervert was representative of some, I guess, of not of the plebeian homosexuality, but of the patrician homosexuality or something. And I don't know. I don't think that I really would view it in those terms, obviously, but I thought it was like colorful.
Does he write things at length, like a blog?
He should. I don't think he does. I mean, Robert Mariani, who runs one of the co-people of Jacobite, I think has been trying to get him to write things for it. But apparently he's writing a book, or so he said, which I'm very excited to review.
Oh, really?
I've said that I'm going to review. I'm going to review every single Frog Twitter book. They're making a bunch. They're getting productive now, inspired by the success of the Bronze Age mindset, which is good.
I mean, that is something I'm actually quite keen about. I think that's really cool. I mean, I think with the quite a big splash that Bronze Age Pervert was able to make for, an anonymous like avatar theory account, I think that is going to really make a lot of people think twice about the opportunities for doing totally independent, book projects and stuff like that. And I find that a very salutary opening.
Yeah, it's like, why, like when you see something like this, like self-published, that actually like makes waves of some sort, and then you see like, why would you want to like give money to vanity press like Zero Books and like have to deal with that and like go on their time frame and all that stuff? And it's like, I think that there's like kind of a lot of promise in it, which is like good and encourages people to write things, but we'll see, because there's also the challenge that people have, like, you gotta write your own book. You gotta actually like still push it through. So that's why I'm excited to see if Logo Daedalus makes a book, because I would be very, very interested.
Yeah, I hope he does. I hope lots of people do. I hope everyone does that more. I think that's awesome. I mean, there is a problem though, I think, with a lot of, even quite smart people who are kind of like intellectuals on Twitter, that a lot of them just don't have their shit together enough to like do long sustained work. I mean, it's because it's just a totally different type of skill or trait to actually carry out sustained long term intellectual projects. It requires like totally different mental muscles, and just, not everyone has them. And I'm not, getting down on people. Like, it's hard if you have a lot going on in your life or whatever, or if you just are low conscientiousness or whatever it might be. But it does lead to kind of a quite a weird situation, and quite a problematic situation in a lot of ways, because Twitter lets like sometimes pretty smart people like shoot these volleys into the mix. But my attitude is kind of, and I want to kind of engage everything. Like I don't think you should have to like write a fucking book to be part of a productive conversation. But I'm sort of like, if the effort and investment is a little too low, then it's a hard time. One has a hard time investing much effort in responding to it. So it's like I kind of have a philosophy right now that is like, if you want to like critique something I say or do, or you want to talk shit about me, like that's completely fine, and I'll even engage it 100%. But you have to be able to at least just like put it into like a 300-word blog post somewhere outside of Twitter. Like, if you can't demonstrate that like minimum threshold of like care, then I'm not investing care into like engaging, really. That's kind of my philosophy that I'm operating on right now, I think.
Yeah. And there's all sorts of like haters on Twitter that are just going to be like spew this vitriol, and it's like, okay, it sounds like really intense if it's like in just like one single tweet and the whole thing is like vitriolic content, but it's like, how, like, okay, let's try to expand that into like 1,000 words, and is it going to be still as intense, or is it going to make any sense at all, or is it still going to like retain some sort of like structural dignity of an idea,
Yeah,
so,
right.
Sort of deceptive, but yeah, I mean, back on Logo Daedalus in particular, who I think like can cram a good amount of content, like idea content into tweets, but like doesn't seem to be able to write like long form, which everyone seems to be trying to get him to do, myself included, because I would want to be able to engage the stuff on the long form.
So you're a fan. You're intrigued.
Well, I'm not sure if I would say a fan,
but you're an interested
rival
that you want to see. You want to see what could be made of his thoughts.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, that's the best kind of, opposition, an engaged, constructive opposition that wants one's, opponents to do more or see more. I think that's good. We're getting some chatter. I can't even keep up with it. So one thing some people are saying is, well, first of all, I got some hard trolls in this chat.
Yeah, what are they saying? I want to hear.
Well, I'm gonna disregard the hard trolls, because that's water off a duck's back. I can't be bothered. But that's probably just gonna encourage them to try harder. But there was one that there was something in here I wanted to address though, real quick. There's actually some funny burns. You can go back over it later, Mike.
Okay.
I wanted to spare you of the distraction. So Jason says, please go easy on Logo. He just lost his favorite SoundCloud rapper to senseless gun violence. I shouldn't be laughing. Sorry. Rest in peace. What was that guy's name again?
XXXTentacion.
Is that how you pronounce it? Or do you just like elide the extra X's?
No, you definitely pronounce the X's.
You say XXXTentacion?
XXX, yeah. 3 X's.
See, I've never heard of him, and when I saw it in writing for the first time, I thought it was just pronounced extantiation or something.
Yeah, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. I feel like this is already like after my time too.
Did you follow any of that or no?
I mean, I followed it, and as much as I was like active on Twitter and saw like people talking about it, but I mean, I'm not really like a big fan. I was sad when Lil Peep died, the other SoundCloud rapper that Logo Daedalus said. I think he said something about like this year, like 2 of my SoundCloud rappers that I got into are dead. Like,
how did that other guy die?
Fentanyl overdose.
Oh shit, that's hard. One person in the chat is asking me if I vape. No, I don't vape, but you know what? I do sometimes smoke a tobacco pipe. how trad is that? It's not really it's not really to like be cool or anything, but I do that. That tobacco is like a good little pick me up sometimes. What else? A lot of this. Sorry, people, I can't address all these things, but some of these are interesting thoughts. This is by far the most lively and interesting chat, side chat that I've had in a Google Hangout. So that's fun. All right, I think we could just move on, but
I want to hear some of the other stuff.
Oh well, I mean, you can check it if you want to take a moment to open it up in your tab. You can follow it too, I think, but I wouldn't recommend it. It's honestly, it's quite hard to follow it and also do the hangout. You're welcome. Okay. You're welcome to if you want to, though.
I just opened up the group chat side thing, and it doesn't show me anything.
No, so you'd have to go onto the page on YouTube to see it. But then you have to be careful also because you have to make sure it's muted so that the audio from the video isn't coming back into the input. You know.
Okay.
No big deal.
I'll do it later.
Yeah, if this was your first time doing a Google Hangout, I wanted to spare you of like the complications. So yeah. So all right, let's just let's move on, shall we? So so what's your story, Mike? Anyway, I mean, I think we've talked enough about Bronze Age Pervert. I'm kind of sick of it. He's cool. Cool. I support all kinds of wacky intellectual projects, but I'm not infinitely interested in Bronze Age Pervert. No offense, buddy. I support you, but right. So what's your story like in a nutshell? Like you're kind of not like on the left or the right, but you've written for Jacobite and I mean, what's Jacobite's story? Like they seem pretty, I guess, open-minded if they're open to like, you know, kind of like queer academic restorations of the Bronze Age Pervert.
It's interesting. And I'm also like, they probably would say something different than I would say. And I almost feel like they don't want to run as many of my things because I'm giving them making them too left. No, I mean, they're okay with it, but it's like I feel like they want to sort of keep or like get back to like being like keeping with like right wing sort of things, or because like they're sort of like anti shit like the Baffler and like the left think piece mags that are like all kind of the same sort of like democratic socialist aligned.
Right. And, I get that they're sort of against that stuff, but I guess, I mean, isn't their slogan like post-political?
Yeah. And so I'm not really sure because like, I don't think there's any such thing as post-political, but I guess what they mean by post-political is like, in the vulgar sense of like the SJWs being like, everything is political, like the personal is political, like thus like me being so offended, I'm like so rightfully offended by the microaggressions because everything's political. And they're like, well, we're like post that. So, I mean, Fair enough, like good for them. And
right. So in a nutshell, I mean, what are like, how do you fall in kind of the multidimensional, like fringe ideological internet intellectual ecology?
Well, I mean, it sort of depends. I mean, after writing this, and I feel like it makes me more like left-wing position just because it's like you get all the shit from the like crazy right-wing people that like are just illiterate and can't read the fact that I'm like not just trying to say Bronze Age pervert's gay, and like, okay, so I identify a little bit more with the left-wing people after that, but then like what next thing you do, like hang out with like the like Verso Books people or like the like DSA people, and then you're like, oh my god, I'm so right-wing. Like
yeah. No, well, you can't roll with those people at all unless you're 100% those people.
Yeah.
Do you know real quick, Mike, do you know Vince Garten? He's talking in the chat. Do you know him on Twitter?
I think so.
Yeah, I know him pretty well. He's cool. He's saying that there's a book called The Political is Political. So he thinks that the next big thing is going to be nothing is political.
Okay.
Maybe. Shout out to Kittler. I wish he was in the mix with y'all. I'm surprised he's not in the chat.
He should be.
Kittler is like
afraid. He's afraid of showing his face or whatever.
Do you know him on Twitter?
Yeah.
Does he give you a lot of shit, or are you buddies, or what?
We're on the same side.
Interesting. Do you know why does he hate me so much?
I think like because
you can be honest. I don't care. I'm just curious.
I don't know. He should contribute. Why?
Yeah, you're right. You don't have to represent fucking people like Hitler. That's fine. That's very unreasonable for me to ask you to like represent his views.
No, I think he would say something like, because like you sort of like try to straddle like the right wing trends and are like opportunistic about like kind of like jumping on that, or like in sort of like disingenuous way, or like the like disingenuous like post leftist sort of thing. And
right.
I mean, it's like fair, and I think that's a fair thing for me to be accused of. And I think that I would like if people were like, you know, the thing I've gotten more is like right wingers being like, "Oh, Mike, he's a secret communist. Like he's like actually just trying to like infiltrate us and like make us like queer communists or something like that." Which I mean, good. And in fact, that is probably like my project. Like
my project is to get on the payroll of Vox.com and Jacobite and Social Matter, and basically
I want to get Vice to pay me to go to China and meet Nick Land.
Hell yeah. Definitely. Yeah, I want to get Vice to pay me to go do interviews with neo-reactionaries and then like join the neo-reactionary cults on the dime of Vice. That would be pretty sweet.
Yeah. Dude, well, I'm actually follow the Bronze Age pervert and like post pictures of you with your wife or something holding the book and being like this beautiful nymph gave me this book, and what does it mean?
Yeah.
You see all the, or I mean, referring to all the like the publicity shit that BAP his Twitter retweets. I guess you can't see because you're blocked.
Yeah, I'm out of loop.
You have to make an non-alt.
So I'm curious, Mike, what's your like quick background story? Like where are you, right? You're in DC,
I'm in
right?
DC. Oh, I'm in Arlington, Virginia.
Oh, okay. And can I ask what you do for a living, or?
I edit reports for like international organizations for at this like publishing firm, and yeah, just like that. And then also like I'm interested in like reading, following like like the discourse, and I feel like recently I've sort of taken an interest in like sort of like right-wing extremist type stuff, and in particular like talking about like gender and like masculinity sort of stuff. Like I'm not sure if you saw the incels article I wrote, the Elliot Rodger one. That's another one where I talked about like the fascist like structure of desire that is like informs like the incel quality. Elliot Rodger like drives him to like break down, and then I like connect that to like celebrity breakdowns and stuff. But anyway, so that's like all like a related study of like right-wing extremist like intersection of like the like queer desire sort of with a lot of the trends we see now that a lot of like the like mainstream media people have like no idea how to describe or talk about, because like it just does not compute for them. Like,
right.
So.
And you went to university, right?
I went to William and Mary.
Oh, right. Okay.
And I graduated a couple of years ago, or like a few years ago. And yeah, I mean, I'm not like in grad school or anything.
No, that's cool. How old are
you? 25.
Cool. So is William and Mary, do they have a lot of like right wingers?
It's kind of interesting, actually. I would say that the more right-wing Virginia school is University of Virginia, which Charlottesville, where the Charlottesville rally, like the Richard Spencer and all that stuff. Whereas William and Mary, I would associate more with like it seemed like there was like a lot of like just like Hillary liberal sort of people on one hand, like the regular normie people that are like just all like just nice Democrats, don't really question anything. And then like there's, I don't know, maybe per capita, William and Mary has like more hipsters like relative to like UVA. And I'm just comparing it to UVA because like those are the two like main like in-state public schools for like Virginia. So I mean,
hey, Mike, have you read Hotel Concierge's take on Elliot Rodgers?
I've not.
Accent.
I need someone to link that to me afterwards.
All right, Axon, and link that, please. Thank you for the tip. What there's something else I was gonna. Oh, Mike, were your parents? This is me, not the chat. Were your parents Democrats or Republicans or what?
They're like,
you don't have to
like conservative, but sort of like switched around with like the recent like election, like there's been a huge flip in people's like Americans political sense. So they definitely identify more with like not Trump for sure. But they're like conservative in general beforehand and stuff. But so
you were kind of born and raised in a kind of conservative family. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, sort of like cosmopolitan, like Northern Virginia suburb still. So like not like authoritarians or
right. I can imagine
not like some like hippie family for sure.
Yeah, I can infer a picture of the situation. What I was going to ask you also is when you went to university and you kind of got educated, did that affect in you a kind of liberal progressive sway or no?
I mean,
in other words, I'm trying to ask if you got the experience of being socialized into kind of like progressive like dogmas or whatever.
I think it's kind of complicated because it's like I don't think like the teacher or like the professors were like trying to like brainwash anyone. In fact, I feel like I got the impression that in a lot of ways they're like more conservative than like the students. But I think like, I mean, definitely read stuff that was like left bent. That it's sort of hard to avoid with like a lot of like social sciences sort of thing. Like I was a German studies major, and that's like German philosophy, literature, and like the content. Well, the philosophy program at William & Mary was like all the analytic stuff that I'm like not really interested in. So I like didn't major in philosophy. And so like the stuff that I like to write about is like more of what was under like the German studies program. And that also kind of like ties in with why like I would cite something like the Tavelite book in like in the Bronze Age Mindset Review. So, okay. But I mean, I don't think I was sort of like indoctrinated into that because there's like, I mean, when you're a college student, you sort of like seek out this stuff yourself because like people are like interested. The thing is cool, and like revolutionary stuff is like cool and stuff. Like, and I mean, there's also some like the edgy like hard right wing stuff. Well, when I was in college and read Ernst Junger in the like war literature class in the German department, the professors were really harsh on Junger and were like, he's like basically like fascist essentially and like not good. And I like at the time I was sort of like, oh, well, he's got like a lot of interesting things that he writes. And there's like, I thought that the stuff that he like as a college student and you read stuff like how he like took psychedelics and you're like, oh yeah, Ernst Junger, he's like actually like way cooler. And, but like, and so like less inclined maybe to like take the professor's warnings about it at face value or stuff. But now like a few years after that, so I guess like four years since then, and you see like the stuff with like all 2016 like Trump, like all this stuff going on in the world, plus like in particular the Bronze Age mindset thing and like the response to my review. And it's like I feel like a lot of the things that are like the professor's criticisms of like Junger in particular that I'm referring to were like kind of on the money, like now a little bit more than I did then, because I was then probably a lot more tolerant, I would say, or a lot more like willing to be like, oh, I'll hear it out, or like I think that his like stuff, because like he had some like philosophical tract Der Arbeiter, which is like just recently translated in English and they're publishing an English version of it. But like that was essentially like this thing about like post World War I, like exaltation of like totalitarian society and like the submission, like the Bronze Age pervert, you must submit to the machine authority of the state. And and all that. So, I mean, it sounded cool when it was like when you're like a college student and you're young and everything sounds cool and like anything that's like radical. And then you sort of like see things change like once the like neoliberal order is like starts to show its cracks, and then it's like, oh well, I don't know if I want to go on this ride.
Okay, very interesting. Now, the really difficult question though, Mike, is from Trent Chadwick, who asks if you were recruited by the CIA during your time at the notorious CIA recruitment school, William and Mary.
Yeah, no, I was not.
Oh, you slipped up there. You almost said yes. That sounds like
I don't think I could ever get a security clearance in a million years.
I don't know. I feel like whenever I meet people who like live in DC or in like Virginia, I'm sorry, like the surrounding areas, I'm sort of like, you know, I start to wonder if they are friends with Tara Burton.
Yeah, it seems like everyone here is like somehow like got a security clearance of some sort, and it's unsettling.
It's a weird part of the country. Like I find that whole part of the country just creepy. Like whenever I'm in DC, it just feels off, man. I don't know. I don't know what it is, but
where are you from?
I was born and raised in New Jersey, actually. And then I live in the UK now. I usually, when people ask me here where I'm from, I usually say Philadelphia because that's where I lived. Yeah. That's where I lived 10 years before I moved to the UK. And it just has greater name recognition and it's close enough to New Jersey. So it just sounds cooler. Yeah. So depending on who asks me, I'm either from Philadelphia or New Jersey. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. So what else are you most interested in nowadays? Like what's your next big project after the Bronze Age pervert, reclamation for the gays?
I'm like sort of thinking about it. I haven't really settled on anything. Well, I have a long-term thing that is expanding the Zizek Jacobite article I wrote and into like a full paper that I'm going to submit to like some academic journal.
Oh yeah.
And that's like basically the headline it had was Zizek is a reactionary now, which I'm not like, I don't actually entirely agree with, but like it was really provocative. And I didn't actually, well, I said that in the piece sort of as like a rhetorical like punch, but there's obviously like a lot to unpack, but yeah.
Could you explain why? I haven't followed any of that, so I'd be curious to hear.
Well, basically Zizek is like stopped writing for a lot of like the outlets that he used to write consistent op-eds for, and like now he's just does like some every now and then like Russia Today, RT online op-eds or whatever, and just like his reputation since well basically like during the Occupy movement he was sort of like regarded as a hero, and like when he spoke like everyone loved him and it was like such a big deal, and all the leftists were like, yeah, Zizek, he's on our side. And then sort of fast forward a few years and it's like 2016 and he's saying that he would vote for Trump if he was American, and like people like Richard Spencer and Milo Yiannopoulos are saying,
did he
like,
say that? I didn't even know.
Yes. Yeah, so it's like so that's like big hit to, I guess, his reputation, at least for like a lot of the leftists. And even though he was sort of like a lot of the things that he said were actually like uncanny, like really correct, or like the he was an early critic of the EU policies about like just letting in all the migrants and stuff. And like essentially when he said like, oh, we can't just like let them all in and let it all sort itself out. And I guess it was in 2015. And when he said that, and that was like, you couldn't say that, or people got really offended. And if I recall correctly, there was really interesting back and forth between him and the now discredited Sam Kriss about of a Norway, or like the existence of Norway, like as in all these like refugees wanted to get to Norway because they have such great stuff there. And him and Sam Kriss had this exchange over like whether or not they were right or wrong about like Lacan's idea of like the like object of desire and like this unattainable object of desire. And I really remember that. And so that was like that was well, yeah, that was just an example of like the criticism that he was getting from the left, and the people were really upset. And then then Trump ended up winning, like Brexit happened, like all this stuff with like right wing populism and things that like also went hand in hand with Zizek's lifelong like anti-political correctness thing, and like calling political correctness totalitarian, all that.
Right.
So basically, like at the end, I sort of said that like Zizek was not really interested in engaging like who he probably would be, who are more interesting for him to engage in this time, because if you're just like sort of posing, like he's always sort of like arguing against like this like hypothetical social justice warrior, which I feel like is now like no longer what you need to argue against, because like there's already been the high watermark of that. Like they're on the defensive, and now like the rightists are on the attack. And so I mean, I feel like he would be like more relevant or more like interesting, more like worth reading if he was sort of to like engage against some like the Nick Land type of people, like the accelerationists, like for example. Then if he was just to be like, oh yeah, I'm arguing against like these academics that just don't get it or whatever, because we've seen that a million times and it's no longer interesting. And
yeah. That's interesting, because Slavoj Žižek is not active on Twitter, I believe, right?
No, he should be though.
Dude, we got to get him a Twitter account.
Yeah,
someone set that up right now, and then email it to him and just like get him locked and loaded on that. And then we need to pull him into like accelerationist Twitter. We'll just like tweet at him until he like can't like hold himself anymore, and we'll just get embroiled in a Twitter flame wars. We need to get Zizek embroiled in hell threads on Twitter to bring him to you know, his new intellectual life, Zizek version 3.0.
I agree.
By the way, we got Crypt in the house. Do you know Crypt on Twitter?
I do.
Crypt
he recently unblocked me.
Crypt is in the house. He wants us to talk about the occult themes in Bronze Age Pervert. Do you have thoughts?
Like what?
Well,
I mean, like what to say about it.
Well, Crypt, I think, is really interested in the whole, in like things like bronzing, like what is the significance of the bronzing and things like that. Crypt thinks that it's transparently alchemical, for instance. But if you don't have any thoughts, don't feel any pressure to. I'm afraid that I don't really have anything very valuable to add to that question personally, although it's intriguing.
I mean, I feel like I'd have to like really go back to it, because I haven't actually like seriously revisited the book since like I wrote the review. But there's like a lot of alchemical stuff that they're talking about that like I guess would be really interesting to someone who's like really interested in like the alchemy, occult type of stuff. I mean, there's a lot in that book. There's like so many different threads, and like the sort of like queer thing that I identified as like the most interesting, because I thought it was like the most complicated and like nuanced and like sort of against itself in a sense. That's why I zeroed in on that. But like, and like didn't talk as much about like the occult, like alchemical type of stuff that like I guess other reviewers might have been more interested in. But I mean, I just like didn't really find that the most interesting part about it, to be honest. Like,
fair enough. Yeah. I mean, I think it speaks to the point about how Bronze Age Pervert seems pretty clearly to be a melange of a few different authors. Like, I think they probably, I think it's like, they were like, all right, let's get a gay guy. Let's get someone interested in occult shit. Let's get someone who writes articles for Vox.com. let's all get into a room and like theorize some possible account. Probably funded by Moldbug, who's probably funded by the Vatican. Sorry,
it seems like everyone knows
my other mode.
Everyone knows Moldbug. Everyone seems like they're like associated with him somehow. He's everywhere.
Well, I think
apparently he goes to all the parties in the Bay Area.
Oh, is that right? Well,
I'm told.
I think the esteem for Moldbug is well earned. I think the Moldbug writings are, on the whole, like, quite an impressive and significant little intellectual achievement, I think, actually. So I think that makes sense. Crip says, I can confirm the project was funded by Orbit Star Sales. It's hard to get tone on these chats, so I'm gonna assume that's being comedic, but I can't be sure. Moldbug hung out with Teal on election night, says someone. Oh, Urbit. That makes more sense.
Yes.
The project was funded by
that's Moldbug's thing.
Star Sales. Yeah, no, that's a whole interesting other can of worms, which I don't really have any, interesting insider information about or very sophisticated comments on, but like the kind of neo-reactionary intellectual / political orbit, it is very fascinating. And yeah, I don't really have too much to say about it though.
Apparently, Moldbug had said something about Bronze Age pervert. Like, let me try to pull it up. It was like, he had said that he could be like a standard bearer or some. Oh, I'm reading the Nick Land tweets that were defending my piece, and quote, Moldbug thought the parentheses great BAP was an opportunity for subversive humor, but such a sense of irony is rarer and more precious than you might think. But yeah, I guess he had said something about like how the irony of Bronze Age pervert was like potentially like a model of like subversive right-wing irony, like in particular, and
right,
which I would have agreed with, but I think that like judging from the response that it got and like how I feel like a lot of people like don't actually see this on like this ironic level and really like take it as this like essentially religious like distinction, is like, well, I think that that's not necessarily true anymore.
Fair enough. Crypt says that he thinks the irony reading is bad.
Well,
I mean, there has to be some element of
there is irony. There's no way that there's just not any irony. Like, I just think that there's something
that's
just painfully naive to say. Like, what? So you seriously think that he's like 100% like totally legit in all this? Like, I don't. It's just impossible.
Maybe you might call it something other than irony, but there's definitely some sort of distance or some sort of comedic detachment of some kind. I think that's
there's a great part where he's like, I don't do irony, I don't know anything of this gay irony, and I cited that in my piece. Obviously, I think that's an ironic statement.
Well, actually, one of the things that I thought was interesting at the beginning of your piece is when you kind of draw the parallels to Nietzsche, specifically in terms of the sociological and material background of the publication of Bronze Age Mindset. The drawing attention to the fact that on some level you can think of Nietzsche as an incel, and a bitter, rejected, man who had to self-publish his books to small audiences.
Yeah.
I thought that was actually a really, worthwhile little, comparison, because, we have this tendency right now in the contemporary times to kind of think about people like Bronze Age Pervert or Moldbug or, these like independent intellectual projects that are kind of just constituted fully on the web without any kind of institutionalized endorsement. Well, I really do think that Bronze Age Pervert is questionable there, because I really do think that, like, my video series was obviously comedic, but I definitely think there's some amount of coordination between like people at Vox and Tara Burton and the author of Bronze Age Pervert. I'm not an actual conspiracy theorist. I don't know how. I have no idea like what's going on, and whatever it is, I doubt that it goes that deep. But I definitely think there's some kind of coordination going on there. So I don't think that I actually don't see the Bronze Age Pervert as like a totally independent kind of like bootstrapped thing. I think it was like a little bit more strategic than that. But anyway, I digress. My point being that it is useful to remember that someone like Nietzsche, who we today are largely admire and see as like heroic, admirable, impressive intellectual of the highest caliber, really was kind of like some, like a failed academic, like writing on the internet who couldn't get a publisher and had like very small number of readers and was generally kind of seen as like a joke, at least in the, at the beginning.
People trust Nietzsche way too much. He is a philosopher that is like the leftists definitely trust Nietzsche too much. They sort of like let him in and they let him have their like make dinner for him and like give him a place to stay. And he's not really on their side. And I also feel like that in that sense, like a lot of the people are way too trusting of Bronze Age pervert, and like they're sort of like taking him at face value, or sort of like not really reading all the other stuff that like the things that they might not want to be thinking about. And like the leftists reading Nietzsche, they want to sort of like downplay like his elitism, or like his like the sort of like exaltations of violence and stuff that he's like spends a lot of time talking about. And like, sure, like you can sort of, there's like a lot of layers of like irony and meaning in Nietzsche that like, yeah, he doesn't mean it like this in that sense, but well, but so I think that in a lot of ways, like we need to be like critical of Nietzsche and like sort of look at actually like heed his own messages about like interpretation and like reading, and not just like actually like being so enamored by it that we're like, oh, he's just like me, like I really want to be just like him. And because I feel like there's some level where like people are sort of like fall into this like enamored idealization of like this like personality that sort of comes through of text. And now I'm speaking of both Nietzsche and the Bronze Age pervert thing. So that's why I thought like in fact, that's how I ended my review, was like, these people are like, they're not really reading it that well. And that's very unchain of them. And like, I mean, I think that's true, because like they're being nowhere near skeptical as like they're saying they should be themselves. So it's like this sort of like really ironic. Right.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. And wait, I wanted to ask you again about something you said earlier in the conversation. I think you said you were wondering if Jacobite will not want to publish you anymore after this. Were you being serious or?
No, not really. I mean, like I think they'll probably want to like change it up a little bit, because I've like written like 3 things for them in the past like 2 months. So it's been a lot of like my stuff specifically. And with each one of them, there's like all these people that are like, oh, this guy's not a Jacobite, like he's a Jacobin. Like it's so different.
Well, I think, so, I think it's pretty cool of them that they are willing to, publish that angle that you published, that, a kind of, it does have a kind of leftist kind of flavor to it.
I mean, it's a lot. Yeah. It's just a lot more interesting, or gets a lot more attention if like this like controversial thing that is like not just some fawning like exaltation of like the Bronze Age pervert thing. If it's actually like critical, people want to read it more than if it's just, oh, this is so great, let me analyze all the themes. Like, what are the themes? Like, this theme is really cool. Like, this one's really cool too, and he does a really good job talking about it. Like,
right. Well, I think it speaks favorably of Jacobite, though, that they're not too hyper allergic to some I
want more people to submit to them. They need more stuff. Like, they need more stuff to give it. I like that.
I think any kind of small online magazine always needs.
Yeah,
it's always in need of like high quality, fresh content. It's just hard to.
That's why Logo Daedalus needs to submit something.
All right, well, here you go. Officially, Logo Daedalus is being called out in public, in video, no less. So maybe that will get him going. I feel like I'm really falling behind in the chat, but there's just too much stuff going on. Crypt says that he thinks he specifically accused you of being a Jacobin.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he did specifically.
Trent says that Nick Land's enjoying a break with the boys in Thailand. No, dude, here's a question for you. Where is Zizek right now in the world? Like, where is he living? Because, he might be hanging out in Shanghai with Nick. I don't know.
Well, that would be something.
I think Zizek might be planning his like big neo-reactionary return to the public sphere.
Well, I think that Zizek has read my piece about him because I got an email from the International Journal of Zizek Studies for about that, and was like, that's something that he's like on the board of or whatever. So I'm awaiting a response from him.
Dude, if you talk to him, please tell him to come on my YouTube channel.
I know I will.
If you talk to Zizek, please just say, look, Slavoy, I know this guy. His name's Justin. Really nice guy to talk with. Really fun to hang out with. I can vouch for him. Do a Google Hangout with him.
I saw him speaking back in like 2015 at like NYU in DC, and he like during this lecture that was mostly about political correctness, he said like the N-word like 5 times. And it was like, yes. And at that time, like there's all these like academics in the room and stuff, and like you could tell that people were like didn't know what to do because they would be like, they knew that they were supposed to be offended, like this some white man, like he can't say the N-word, but like they're also sort of like enamored with the celebrity at the same time. It was really fascinating, and that's did it, and then you kept pushing it.
Yeah, that's fascinating. That's edgy as fuck. Vince is saying that we should do a roundtable with Zizek, Nick Land, and Dugin. Dude, I mean, I don't know if you saw.
I think Dugin is probably overrated. I don't know. People like him. I think that he's interesting, but until I have to read his book, I guess. But I like Land and Zizek.
I think I'm gonna burn the absolute last ounce of academic cultural capital that I have as a proper academic on putting together a funded roundtable with, basically it'll be a large roundtable. It'll be Zizek, Nick Land, Dugin, Moldbug, Bronze Age Pervert, and who else? Kittler maybe, and a few like a handful of like low level internet trolls.
Yeah,
something like that.
Yeah, Logo Daedalus.
I have to read this guy now. Logo Daedalus.
Well, it's just like a bunch of tweets. He doesn't like make any content himself, and then if he does, I make fun of it, and then he like stops doing it.
Dude, I mean, people, if you're really good at Twitter, like if you just find yourself like flowing on Twitter like crazy and you write like a lot of thoughts on Twitter, you just turn that shit into a book. Why not?
That's what I think he's doing.
Yeah.
I hope.
It's not a bad model. It's probably fits.
That's like what the Bronze Age Pervert thing is. It's exactly like that. A lot of the stuff in the book is like his tweets recycled, I think. Like there are a lot of things that I recognize that I feel like I had seen before.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, it's not a bad idea. It's not a bad model. I mean, I've kind of been experimenting with like kind of unifying my workflows in a sense. Like I write stuff and then I kind of plan like a video that's kind of based on it, but extends it a little bit. And then I think about like, who do I want to have a conversation with that might like have something to do with this? And I mean, I think that's definitely the future. Like people who are trying to do like creative intellectual work right now, like the future, the immediate or near future of like significant, I think, progress in this dimension of actually creating new forms of production really will be basically people who figure out how to make all of these different platforms kind of work for their own intellectual machinery.
Yeah, there's like it seems like there's people always trying to like say like what happened to the public intellectual? Like why is Jordan Peterson like the one public intellectual now? And it's like, I think a really stupid discussion, because there's like so many people out there like making stuff or like talking about stuff that they just don't know where to look. And like, sure, there's not very many like on TV, and a lot of the people that they get like to be talking heads on TV and stuff like are full of shit, and like no one really actually respects them either. But like there's a lot of stuff going on that is just like in parts of the internet or like that like the mainstream media, like the Vox people usually don't venture toward. And like the exception is like that Vox piece that was like, oh, Bronze Age Pervert, like maybe he's like breaking ground and whatever. So, but I do think that like a lot of the things are going to be, like distributed through social media and like people that are like really savvy using those platforms and like produce like short form, like Twitter friendly, YouTube friendly content and like do a good job of it are going to be like sort of the vanguard of that. And I think like Jordan Peterson, I don't really know very much Jordan Peterson stuff. Like he's sort of someone that I've like consciously tried to ignore because I'm sick of hearing people talk about him. But like he kind of, I think he's got like a lot of YouTube videos and stuff. Like he's particularly savvy of using the social media platforms and like being like an alternate to like the mainstream sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I can share something on here that I don't think I've actually like said anywhere in public, but I will admit wholeheartedly to being a total kind of like Jordan Peterson early watcher. Like I was watching and pretty like diehard. Like when I first found him on YouTube or on the internet or whatever, like it was probably about a year ago. It was like well before his like major surge to fame. I guess at that point, if I heard about him, he was like fairly well known, I guess, in some circles. And I got very intrigued by him. I was just curious about like what this random academic psychologist guy was saying in his videos. And then you learn that he's kind of like, you know, mentioning Nietzsche and mentioning interesting kind of ideas that you wouldn't normally hear in a psychology lecture. And then you're kind of like, okay, there's something going on under the hood here. That's like, you know, whatever you might say of it, I'm sure there's lots of good critiques. There's something real going on. There's something like sincere and interesting, at least, that this guy is like, you know, pretty passionately interested in expressing and expounding over, you know, several years of YouTube lectures, really. So yeah, I got into it like pretty early and got quite intrigued. And basically, I mean, I found him at the time that I found him. I thought it was really, really useful and stimulating and edifying, you know, and I think in like a pretty simple way, to be honest. Like it wasn't like super highbrow experience. I mean, I think he's totally smart. Like I'm not shitting on him or taking distance or anything to distance myself from like his fanboys or whatever. But I think like my appreciation of him was quite similar probably to what most of his like current fawning like fanboys experience, although I'm not like a fanboy. But what I'm saying is I have some personal experience with why I think like so many people, especially young men, like love him so much. I'm not like fawning, but I get it. And there's something, yeah. So I kind of, this is all just a roundabout personal story about how I think you're totally right that basically there are some people that are already using things like YouTube to initiate like fundamentally different types of intellectual projects over the long term. But it's also new, so who knows how any of it will shake out.
Yeah, and there's that, and I think with like someone like Jordan Peterson and like a lot of the stuff that's come up with him, and also the stuff that I've been writing about too, like stuff about like masculinity is like such this like contested territory because like coming out of like a lot of the like social justice sort of things were like ascendant, and like a lot of the feminist stuff like got like really a lot of traction, and as I said before, like I think like hit a high watermark in like as far as like the public sense of these sorts of things, and now like we've seen like a reaction to it in a sense, and so like now the reaction is trying to like sort of like stake out claims, and I think like the place where it's staking out claims is on like what it like means to be a man, and like in particular like what like the modern man is, and so that's why there's like all sorts of stuff that's like trying to like go into the past and like see like what this like idealized like male form is, and
right.
So I mean, in this sense, I like totally am on like the left-wing side, because like I think the like chauvinist masculinity sort of thing is like total bullshit. Like I think it's like this like just this like thing that people are chasing, that they're like trying to get to, and like it never really was anything. Like we're just going to sort of like see a lot of the like make a lot of the same realizations that you like see like past feminist sort of things making.
That's interesting. And,
yeah. So I think like
yeah, so you're not so into kind of masculinity and
well, I mean, like I'm I'm like a man, like a cis man that like presents as a man, and I like see myself as like a guy, and like so I mean it's sort of like a part of me and stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't really feel like I have to like prove myself in some ways. I don't know, maybe I'm like well socialized and stuff, or
Yeah.
I'm fully Oedipalized, as like Freud would say, and
Well,
but
I mean, I guess I kind of have a bit of a rant to give here. I mean, I think that I'm with you in the sense that like I to this day remain, you know, something of a feminist. I mean, I also think that like the history of masculine ideals is largely, you know, very mythical and can often be oppressive and does contribute to a lot of like fucked up shit. And
yeah,
I'm also like, you know, very supportive of like gender self-determination and all of that sort of stuff. Like I think people should be free to do whatever they want, culturally, you know, with themselves, with their gender, with their expression, with their performance of themselves. I'm like 100% supportive of that sort of stuff. But I guess what I will say that perhaps is a little bit against what you were saying is that I definitely do think that the kind of right-wing talking point about how feminism kind of does teach men to like really internally like hate themselves a bit.
oh, I mean, I think that's true, and I think that's
Yeah.
bad. Yeah,
Yeah. So we agree on that then. Yeah. I think that that's very real. And I think that, you know, someone like Jordan Peterson and his like rise to extraordinary fame and appreciation by so many people is very much because of this. And like,
yeah,
the reason I don't talk much about Jordan Peterson is because I don't think I don't have much like new or interesting to say. Like I wasn't actually a fan of him kind of from the early days, or by fan I just mean like I watched a lot of his stuff and thought it was worth watching. Um, and it was largely, to be honest, like for personal reasons related to precisely this stuff that we're talking about. Like I had spent several years kind of like living fully in kind of like the left wing SJW kind of like mentality. And like when I don't know, I think it is basically true that like when men kind of like are overly immersed in that culture, they you really do start to like fuck yourself up pretty badly with like your mental routines. And you know what? Like it's really, really hard to get out of that if you don't have like someone who's at least like semi-intelligent kind of like speaking at you alternative, you know, signals, you know. And so it
yeah,
makes I completely understand the psychology of people who got real, especially young men who got really into Jordan Peterson, because I kind of
for
experienced it
sure.
myself. Like it's not that fancy or highbrow necessarily, although I think Jordan Peterson is certainly, you know, quite smart and makes, you know, good highbrow arguments. It's just the basic reality that, you know, if you're fucking depressed because you're like living a shitty kind of like like sterilized kind of like neutered life, because of like the self-loathing ideas that you're like constantly telling yourself and trying to behave by, you know, like if you find some like even semi-smart guy who's like saying at length why a lot of that is stupid and fucked up, like you're gonna immediately feel like, okay, this gives me avenues for feeling like better about myself, for feeling healthier, for feeling more, you know, confident and excited about life and my possibilities in life. Like it's completely unsurprising to me that very large numbers of people, when all they have is kind of like liberal media, like feminist culture, are going to find
Yeah,
Jordan Peterson and they're going to be like, yes, okay, give me more of this guy, please.
yeah, and I mean, there's like a big difference in like what one person's like surrounded by, and I mean, like if when I was in college and stuff, and like just surrounded by like students and all the like hipster kids that William and Mary and stuff, and like they're like puritanical ideology essentially, and like I was like a lot more like against like the like trigger warning sort of stuff, and like a lot of like things like sort of made me more like uh, I felt like I needed to like argue against that a lot more. But since I've like graduated and basically I'm just like in like bourgeois society of like this urban life and stuff. And I mean, you probably have a different one because you're in academia still, but like, right? Like you're a professor. And so it's like a different climate. And like, so like, I feel that I'm not really sort of arguing against the same sort of people because I also have a different audience. And a lot of my audience is also like involved with like the right wing stuff, which I feel like with the perspective of like being out of academia and stuff, like I sort of see it in a different way, or I feel like it's a lot less seductive than it like might have been otherwise. And yeah.
Yeah, no, I can see that. We're getting some questions about the stuff we're talking about, but and I appreciate those questions, but to the people asking them, I'm gonna politely decline to talk much more about the whole like feminism, Jordan Peterson thing. Not because they're bad questions or because I'm not interested in it, but just because I'm very cautious about not wanting to be like some sort of like performer of these kind of like well-worn ruts in the contemporary culture wars. Like I don't want to be like, you know, I'm not interested in kind of like rehearsing basically like anti-feminist critique.
We'll just go in circles, really.
Yeah, there's lots of interesting debates to be had, but I guess there are a lot of certain kind of hot talking points and kind of mental ruts that are very well worn grooves right now in kind of contemporary debates about these things. And I just instinctually try to, whenever I feel myself kind of moving close to them, I try to just go in a different direction because, who needs to kind of rehearse well-known talking points? So thank you for those questions. I'm not dodging them. I just don't especially want to talk too much about that. We can talk more about it later. Yes, as Bruce says, in other words, anti-SJW content is gay. That's one way. That's one way to put it. So you know what? I mean, Mike, this has been really fun. You're a super interesting dude. I'm kind of feeling like I'm starting to kind of run out of steam. We've done like an hour and a half now. So
yeah.
You're probably
me too. This has been good though.
You're probably a little fried too, right?
Yeah. We should tie it up. So.
Yeah. Okay. I hope I'm not overtaxing you.
What is there any like other outstanding questions that like we can maybe hit like really fast?
No, I mean there are always lots of questions that one conversation can never get to. So I could easily think of a bunch of things I would love to hear more about your thoughts on, but who cares? It's just wrap it up whenever we're tired. So
all right, word.
But I hope was this fun for you? I hope
I had a good time. I look forward to like doing future stuff or like a panel with the other, like maybe we'll get Nick Land on here.
Oh well, I recorded a podcast with Nick a couple weeks ago. Actually, I think it was really interesting and really
I got to listen to that.
Cool. Yeah, it's sort of it's in the queue. It's gonna. I think it actually might be due to come out next.
Oh, you haven't even released it yet.
No, I do like a bunch of them, and then I kind of build like a backlog so that I can do like reliable weekly releases. Yeah. So a couple weeks ago I did like a shitload, and then soon I'll do a shitload. Actually Thursday I'm going to do one with Robin Hanson. Do you know him?
I think so.
He's an economist at George Mason. He's very interesting kind of.
Oh yes.
Yeah, he's super smart and very, he's like libertarian, I guess. But
everyone at George Mason's libertarian.
Yeah, it's true.
Libertarian headquarters.
Yeah, but I think they're also like they're not really left or right. They're libertarian, but they're very like free thinking people. So yeah, I'll be talking with Robin Hanson on Thursday. I'm interested in that. That should be cool. But yeah, you mentioned Nick Land, right? So we did a podcast, and that will come out soon, hopefully. So yeah, I think you might be interested in actually a lot of the themes that we talked about.
Yeah.
Because I think it seems like you and I kind of probably agree on a lot of things. It seems like we have a similar vibe, maybe.
Yeah. I think if we fleshed it out, it would be, we could, we might be like mirror image or like a sort of like reverse, because I feel like you probably have like the opposite, like you're in academia, but you're trying to like not be that. And I feel like I'm like not in academia, but like in a way sort of like try to like take that up and.
Oh,
like,
interesting. Okay. Yeah, right. Because you're trying to write like scholarly articles and stuff like that, and that's kind of what you're trying to move towards and work on. And yeah, and I'm an academic, and I'm trying to like spend all my time on the internet.
Yeah.
I'm glad you enjoyed this. I hope, and this was definitely interesting, and you're easy to talk to. So yeah, definitely let's stay in touch if you want to ever talk again, or if you want to do something else. If you know of anyone else, like these Google Hangouts, like, you can have multiple people on them. So if you, know anyone cool that you think would want to talk with all of us, we could talk or bring in other people, do whatever,
Yeah, I'll work on that.
Yeah, work on getting Zizek. That's
yeah. That could be a stretch, but we'll see.
No, that's your main task. Do it or never come back. No, I'm just kidding. No, thank you very much, Mike, for talking with me. This was really fun. Not a lot
thank you for having me on.
you might be surprised, but not everyone in the world is super excited to have long conversations with total strangers. So
I know it went pretty well, considering.
Yeah. No, well, that's the thing. It always goes well. It's always fun. It's always easy. I mean, but most people, not everyone, it doesn't suit everyone. Like not everyone is open to that idea. So I thank you for being open to that idea.
Yep. Well, thanks again for having me on.
You got it, Mike. I'll be in touch with you.
Yep. See ya.
All right. See you later, dude.